Democrats doing some major soul searching following Republicans' upset victory in Virginia, the loss of that governor's mansion, forcing the party to rethink its messaging as pollsters project a grim outcome for the midterms. Let's bring in our panel now. Matt Gorman is a former communications director for the National Republican Congressional Committee, and Kevin Walling is a former Biden surrogate. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. All right, Kevin, I'll start with you. There's a recent ABC News WAPO poll, a generic ballot poll from the Washington Post, which finds that House GOP candidates leading Dems by 10 points. And plus, take into account President Biden and VP Harris aren't doing their party any favors, with both seeing disapproval ratings above 50%. Should Democrats be worried?
Yeah, Julie, I think we should. You know, Virginia and New Jersey was a wake-up call for Democrats. We're about 350 days away from the midterm elections, and clearly there's a lot of anxiety with regards to the American people. Now, we're seeing record growth coming out of this pandemic, hopefully. Projections as high as 8% GDP growth in this last quarter. Obviously, today's Black Friday. We're seeing huge gains in terms of consumer confidence. You know, we had about 21 million Americans on unemployment this time last year for Thanksgiving. That number is now 2 million. But again, that all doesn't matter in terms of the statistics if the American people don't feel good about their economic situation with regards to inflation. So Democrats really have to step up their game. That's why I'm here to talk about the key issues facing American families and to really fight for and talk about the middle class tax cuts that we included in the American Rescue Plan, for example, that was passed, giving $300 checks for every child in this country. That needs to be extended. That can't expire at the end of this term. So, again, Democrats, we've got a long way to go to the midterms, but we got to step up our game, certainly, Julie.
Well, Matt, I mean, analysts say that Democrats are actually in need to get back to a meat and potatoes message about the economy, if you will. The party is facing pressure, obviously, from the left on social issues. It could also alienate moderate voters in 2022, which is really honestly right around the corner. Are Democrats doomed, do you think, to repeat history, or do you think they can decide their own fate next November?
Well, I think the dirty little secret is they don't have an answer for those meat and potatoes issues like the inflation or the economy. I mean, they got a real wake-up call in Virginia with the gubernatorial elections just a few weeks ago, and instead of taking lessons from that and heeding the warnings, they started accusing Republicans of using dog whistles and saying that Democrats in the state who voted for Joe Biden by 10 points back just a year ago were essentially just rubes. So here's the thing. If they're not talking about the issues people care about, then people are going to tune them out. And they're talking about more spending and climate change legislation. And that's not, if you look at the polls, what voters are concerned about. They need to stay focused on that.
What people are concerned about are rising prices, a crisis that we are facing in shortage of supplies and rising gas prices. I mean, that is going to be the biggest concern, Kevin, come the midterms. People are going to look to Democrats when they have less money in their checking account, and that is something Democrats need to make a change on.
Yeah, Julie, I think you're absolutely right. Matt and I are in agreement that it is going to be a bread and butters, election in 2022. And again, we need to make the case to the American people that if you support Democrats, we're the ones fighting for middle-class tax cuts, as I talked about with the American Rescue Plan, passed single-handedly by the Democrats. They gave $300 checks for every child in this country. That cut taxes for middle-class families. Obviously, inflation is a serious concern. Supply chain issues are a serious concern. And that's why you're seeing the White House really step up and talk to those issues with regards to gas prices, opening our strategic reserves to balance out gas costs in the wake of this holiday season. So, again, Democrats need to focus on those issues. Matt and I are in agreement, but the midterms are a long way to come.
Matt, the headline of Byron York's newsletter in the Washington Examiner, and I want you to react to this real quick. It reads, Democrats' deepest fears. Quote, voters couldn't name anything Democrats had done. Pollsters write they are unhappy with the general direction of the country. They see Democrats as only focused on equality and fairness and not on helping people like them. And perhaps most of all, the researchers found that Biden is hurting even among supporters. How much should Democrats be taking stock of where the party is headed in 2022 and 2024? And should they be nervous?
The time to change is right now. If they wait 6 months, it's already too late. We want to talk about gas prices. How about the fact that Joe Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline? He's letting Russia build a pipeline, but not the one that can affect American energy prices. Mark Short, who was on before, is absolutely right. We were a net exporter in oil before. That would help gas prices. It's these things, again, they need to take stock of, not these social change legislation that they're really putting their weight behind. It's the things like gas prices and the price when you go get your turkey or when you go got your food yesterday, how much that cost you. They can't lose sight of that. Republicans need to stay focused on that as well.
Matt Gorman, Kevin Walling, thank you both. Have a great weekend.
You too. Happy Thanksgiving, Julie.
You too.